I know, chasing that dough, hitting that road, getting that money, man. All I know, loading that foe, kicking down doors, getting that money, man. We gon' make it money. We gon' take it Grizzly. We gon' make it money. We gon' take it Grizzly.
The next topic we're going to discuss on Boxing Bros is Terence Bud Crawford is suing Top Rank. It mainly because he's saying that there's some racial bias within the organization. So let's take a look. And this is by Mike Carpenter. And Mike Carpenter says that welterweight champion Terence Crawford filed a lawsuit Wednesday against his former promoter Top Rank in Nevada, alleging racial bias on the part of the company's chairman, Bob Arum. The suit alleges that the 90-year-old Arum continues to make racist and bigoted statements and purposefully damage the reputation of black boxers. Crawford, who is black, signed with Top Rank in 2011 and rose to prominence, winning titles in 3 weight classes on his way to worldwide recognition. He's currently ESPN's #1 welterweight and #2 pound-for-pound boxer. The suit also claims that Arum sordid history with athletes of color, especially black fighters, and his bias favoring white and Latino fighters is well documented and known throughout the boxing world, and that Arum makes no secret of his deep-seated bias against black fighters. Bud Crawford's lawsuit against Top Rank is frivolous, Arum said in a statement on Wednesday. His vile accusations of racism are reckless and indefensible. He knows it, and his lawyer knows it. I have spent my entire working life as champion of black boxers, Latino boxers, and other boxers of color. I have no doubt the court will see Crawford's case for the malicious extortion attempt that it is. Crawford, 34, is seeking damages to be determined at trial in excess of $5.4 million. Money the fighter claims he lost due to Top Rank's failure to deliver a second fight in year of 2 of the extension he signed in 2018, along with its inability to offer him a bout with Errol Spence Jr. The suit claims that when Crawford signed to fight Kavaliauskas, that's all I know is Kavaliauskas. When Crawford signed to fight Kavaliauskas in 2019, the agreement included a $900,000 payment if Top Rank didn't in good faith offer Crawford a bout with Errol Spence by the end of 2020. It is unfortunate that Top Rank did not treat Terence properly and in fact spoke out regularly against him, Crawford's attorney Brian Freeman told ESPN. Freeman also represented Mikey Garcia in his 2014 suit against Top Rank, which led to the parties terminating his promotional agreement after Garcia was sidelined for nearly 3 years. Unlike other boxers bound to Top Rank contracts, Terence can assert his claim in court without Top Rank forcing him to sit out. Friedman said, "Make no mistake, that's a game changer." Crawford claims breach of contract as well as fraudulent and negligent misrepresentation. He also alleges that Bob Arum made disparaging comments about him in an effort to harm his reputation and impact future prospects with a new promoter. The suit points to Arum's 2020 remarks that he could build a house in Beverly Hills on the money I've lost on him in the last 3 fights. Crawford made $6 million for his November pay-per-view bout with Sean Porter, the last fight of his deal with Top Rank. The Omaha, Nebraskan-born fighter made $3.5 million for the Kell Brook bout, $4.8 million for his fight with Amir Khan, and $4 million for the matchup with Kavaliauskas. The suit also points to comments Arum made in 2019 regarding the difficulty in making a Crawford-Spence fight with PBC founder Al Heyman, who advises Spence. He's going to say, "Spence, listen to me. Don't listen to the white guys. Because if you listen to the white guys, they're going to steer you down the wrong road. Listen to me, brother. We're part of a brotherhood. And I'll tell you, and if I tell you not to fight Crawford, I'm telling you not to fight Crawford." That's exactly what he will say. So that's what Mike Carpenter wrote in the article with TC suing Top Rank $1 bill. What's your reaction to all of that?
That's a lot. That's a lot. It's a lot to digest. Oh, wow. Where do I start? All right. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Racism. You know.
So is it really the elephant?
No. Racism. Does it happen in the sport of boxing? Yes. Is it a part of boxing? Yes. Race is a part of boxing. Do you see certain black fighters getting the short end of the stick? Yes, because we know who comes out to watch these matches, right? We know that the Latinos have a great following. So a lot of promoters, you know what I'm saying, even with the card that they got coming up with Keith Thurman. If you look at the undercard, you know what I'm saying, it's a Latino card. It's like even who Thurman is fighting, he has a Latino backing. And you got Leo Santa Cruz on that card as well. You know what I'm saying? People know that the Latinos come out and they support their fighters. You know? Now, if there's a Caucasian fighter, we know that the Caucasians are going to come out and they're going to support that fighter, whether they be Polish or Irish or Italian, whether he's Italian, whatever, you know what I'm saying? Whatever it is, they're going to come out and they're going to support that guy. It's been plenty of times that we say this between African Americans that we do not support our fighters. You know, because a lot of us we'll scream wilder, we'll scream all this, but we bootleg his fights. People won't go and order his fights. People won't go to watch him perform. They'll rather watch it on YouTube or something later, So that's a factor that we always talked about in boxing, where race does play an issue, and how promoters play on that. And it as far as selling tickets and how the money is generated. So I understand that part. I personally, Bob Arum is getting the bad end of the stick because, Bob Arum is a promoter, and I'm sure there's probably been some things where he can, I don't know, but I seen Bob's with my own eyes saying the next fight we gonna do the voice for me, Kaden. The next fight
is going to be Earl Spence. He can beat Earl Spence and Garcia in the same night.
Go ahead, we watched that. We was together. We watched that with our own eyes when he said that. And then TC said, I want Manny Pacquiao. Bob looked like a deer in headlights. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know what that part is in the contract or what they're talking about. I can only go off of what I seen and heard with my own eyes. So I know what that situation is going.
Just before you finish with that, dog, I just want to add something as well. You can, but what you just pointed out, Trill, is also going to be Bob Arum's piece of evidence. When I said, let's make Spence next, this dude called out Pacquiao himself, and the world saw it. I wanted to make Spence. I tried to deliver on my promise. I just did one of my best sales jobs ever, and he called out Pacquiao instead of Earl Spence.
Right then and there, and left Bob looking like a deer headlight. So, and this was something that we seen and we heard, I can't, if you got to give me some evidence, if you're saying racism, because sometimes everything isn't racism, it's what you generate. Like we was talking about before, you might feel like, you're the best fighter out there. But if people are not coming to watch you, if people are not tuning in to see you fight, but they're coming over here to watch the Caucasian kid or the Latin kid, and they're getting the love, you can't get mad. You can't get mad, and everything is not racism. If you're not, if you don't feel like you're being equal, everything is not because it's racism. You can't call racism or everything. Even though even though racism do exist, everything isn't racism. Some things is just sometimes is how it is. It's what you generate. Some things is just business. Was he being unfairly treated over there? We don't know, but I do know that he re-signed with the guy when he could have left. I do know these other. I do know this is just the stuff that I can go off. It was so bad and it was racism before. Why re-sign with these bigots? That's just how I feel, you know. And and man, because if it was really some racism stuff, let me see the evidence and let me go, and I'll be backing you 100%. Because racism sucks, you know what I'm saying? But we can't call everything racist just because we don't feel like we was treated how we wanted to be treated or something because of we feel a certain way that day. You know what I'm saying? Everything isn't racism, and when you play that card all the time, you take away from times where it really matters, where we really need to stand up and come together because of people being treated unfairly because of their religious or their color, you know, beliefs. So man, there was just so much in there. It was just so much in there. I just want everybody just to can we all just get along? Rodney King. But it was a lot in this lawsuit thing, man. I hope it gets figured out. I hope TC doesn't have to sit, and I hope it's just not one of these situations where you feel like you got to bad mouth the person you was just with so you can move on. You know, like that's how some people be in a relationship. You know what I mean? Like they feel like in order for me to move on, they got to be some type of bad blood. You know what I'm saying? Just can't just separate and go over ways. We got to have some type of fight or something for it to move on. Hope it's not one of that situations. Hopefully this can get figured out and we can see TC fighting somebody soon. And hopefully the Spence fight will happen in late 2022. Oof, that was a lot.
All right, Conspiracy.
Yeah. Honestly, I probably agree with everything that Trill just said. To be honest with you, I'll say in addition, it's hard to prove racism anyways. For one, Bob Arum has a stable of fighters from across the globe, right? And he promotes black fighters on most of his cards. And TC, based off of that article, you know, he generated like around 18 million with Bob Arum. You know, so it's gonna be kind of tough.
I want to say generated, he made.
Yeah. Like it's gonna be kind of difficult to say, you know, he's discriminating against me, or you know, if I was of another race, I would be generating X amount of dollars. You kind of have to prove it. And the fact that the article even talked about Mikey Garcia, who's a Mexican fighter, also had issues with trying to get major fights. I remember he was trying to get the Pacquiao fight, he couldn't do it. You know, so is it really a race issue? You know what I mean? Or is it a supply demand issue? You know, if you as an African-American fighter are comparing yourself to Mexican fighters, it's going to be kind of difficult because boxing for the most part is a Latino sport. You know, they know if they put a Latino fighter in any card, that's going to generate a lot of revenue for them, right? I don't know if that really happens with African-American fighters. Me personally, I don't think so, you know? And so we just got to be realistic, you know? And if you want to compare it to like, let's say an Irish or a Polish fighter or whatever, again, you know, they're the one representation of their people, one or two, maybe three, right? We have so much representation in boxing that we're not going to all just co-sign a black fighter just because they're black, you know? And on top of that, look at TC. This dude does not promote himself at all. Like, well, man, he's a nice guy. He's a family guy, but that's cool and all, but that don't sell tickets. You know, he has to be more visible. He has to be out there. He has to promote himself, which he does not do. You know, and Trill had an excellent point. Why re-sign to Top Rank if you feel like, you know, they've been discriminating against you due to your race? So I don't know, man. I think his case is weak, but maybe there's more information behind the scenes that we don't know. You know, so I will stay open-minded, but as of right now, I don't feel like he has a solid argument claiming that Bob Arum is racist. I don't know. That's kind of wild. And on top of that, I'm assuming Bob Arum, in good faith, tried to make that fight with Earl Spence. Again, Earl Spence isn't signed to Top Rank. He signed to another promotional company. So to say, hey, he didn't get me that fight, I feel like I need to sue now. It's kind of strange. And just what, like last week we talked about on the PBC side, they're like, we don't know if we want to get this fight. We're afraid people going to bootleg it, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. That sounds like what he's been going through with Top Rank. Now PBC has an opportunity to make that fight, and they seeming like they're backpedaling. So is it really because of racism, or is it because of supply and demand?
All right, TBE.
Bob Arum is racist. According to Terence Crawford. According to Terence Crawford.
As a whole and all the other faces you see on the screen. That's his opinion and his opinion.
According to Terence Crawford, you know. And all I'm going to say, Terence, if this is true, prove it. Provide the proof. Provide footage, audio recordings, witnesses, people who saw him commit racist acts towards you, or you know. But right now, as of now, I'm just gonna say, Terence, you're being more than petty. You're queen petty right now.
Oh my God!
You guys,
the views and opinions of the TVE do not reflect the Boxing Bros as a whole and all the other faces you see on the screen. That is strictly his opinion and his opinion only. Go ahead.
You guys were buddy one day and at each other's necks, at each other's neck, the next. So I like, for me, this is like my co-host said, why would you resign with a guy you view as racist and not come out about it and want to sue? All I'm gonna say is, Terence, be careful what you do right now. I don't know. I'm Caden's a lawyer guy. I don't know if I'm right, but if everything fails, you can be counter-sued for defamation, and it can all blow up in your face. So be careful what you're saying, and good luck. Just provide proof.
It's probably highly unlikely he'll be countersued, but I mean, it really depends. But let's start here. I want to say this, and I want to say this outright. I don't know what happened. I wasn't present. I wasn't in Top Rank meetings. I don't know Terence Crawford, and I don't know Bob Arum personally. So I can't vouch for the character of neither one of them. And I can't act like I know that TC's a great man. And I can't act like I know the same about Bob. I do not know. What I can tell you is this. Does racism exist? Absolutely. But you don't have to take my word for it. You can look this up yourself. Take a Tesla, for example. The organization Tesla recently had to pay $137 million to a former black employee because they went to trial and it was determined that this employee was subjected to a hostile work environment based on race. And as a result, this employee was awarded $137 million. Look it up for yourself, because, you know, I give it to you and I feel like I'm wasting my time because you don't appreciate it anyway. Otherwise, I'd pull it up. But you can look it up for yourself. So Tesla has to pay $137 million for a hostile work environment for an employee because this employee was discriminated and harassed based on race. So I say all that to say it happens. And not only does it happen, sometimes the courts do rule in your favor. I'll give you another example. In the middle of this football season, we're in the playoffs, and the Las Vegas Raiders lost yesterday. But they opened the season with John Gruden as their head coach. John Gruden had to resign as head coach because they were reviewing interviews of emails of the Washington football team and discovered emails of John Gruden where he made racist statements, where he made misogynist statements, where he made homophobic statements. The trifecta, all in his emails, to the point where this man resigned because of what was said. So even if you don't harass, even if you don't outwardly express your feelings about people, are the decisions you make not impacted by certain biases you may have? John Gruden, and what he said about black people in his emails, he said that the players rep for the National Football League said his lips look like Michelin tires. Right? And if you're, and some people can say, well, what's wrong with that? Well, he does have big lips, except when you realize that that's a physical attribute that is known for black people. Like black people typically physically have big lips, and we're made fun of this throughout history in minstrel shows and other things. And for him to say what he said, in addition, he said other things. But you may say, oh, that statement doesn't mean much. You factor that statement with other statements in that he made, and then it adds up. The misogynist statements, the homophobic statements, and then just the irony of it all. When he makes this statement, he has an openly gay football player on his team. So now this football player who plays for John Gruden finds out, this openly gay player who plays for John Gruden finds out that his coach is homophobic. The black players on his team find out that he said racist things about black people. And then anyone with a wife, a daughter, a sister finds out that he says misogynist things about women as well. The man could not walk back in that locker room. He had to resign. So how this relates to Bob Arum is, I don't know if there's a series of emails. I don't know if there's a smoking gun. I don't know what evidence TC may have. I can tell you this. TC knows more about Bob Arum than I do. He knows more about Bob Arum than you do. He's been in the meetings. He knows. I don't know what smoking gun he has. But with that being said, there's also the opposite thing being said. Although I should say, I should also give the other viewpoint. It doesn't, just because those people did it. Oh, I almost forgot. Oh, so I'm glad I'll get back to this. Donald Sterling, the owner of the former owner of the Los Angeles Clippers, and what he said to that woman about Magic Johnson and the racist things he said about Magic Johnson. Right? He just couldn't stick. He was stuck on Magic. You got to listen to this artist. He was stuck on Magic for some reason. And it was like he didn't care if she was sleeping around. He only cared if she slept with Magic. Like, it was crazy. Stuck on Magic. But this is what's crazy. So this is the former owner of the Clippers. And then when he gets confronted by the woman on the audio about what he said is racist, he says, I give them money. I give them money. I help them buy houses. I help them buy cars. Because I hear the argument like, oh, well, Bob Arum paid TC all this money. No, TC earned that money. See, because TC had a talent and Bob Arum wanted that talent. So he paid him to acquire that talent and to have that talent on his roster. The same way that Donald Sterling does. It wasn't like Terence Crawford was some homeless guy sitting in the park and Bob Arum walked up to Terence Crawford and said, I'm going to pay you $4.8 million just because I'm Mr. Generous. No, TC could box, and he's one of the best at what he does. That's why you paid him. That's why Chris Paul was making all that money. You didn't give Chris Paul a house. You didn't give Chris Paul cars. Chris Paul is one of the greatest point guards that ever lived in any era. That's why you paid him. You make it seem like Chris Paul didn't put in work to be as good. He was out there dribbling. He was out there shooting. He was out there playing those games. He was out there perfecting those grabs. Donald Sterling, if Donald Sterling was going to walk on the court in the arena, who would pay to see that? Who would pay to see Bob Arum walk in the ring? Nobody. The people pay to see Crawford. So stop the madness. Without Crawford, you have no business. So I don't want to hear that, oh, he gave Crawford the highest paydays. No, Crawford earned it. Now, let's get back to Bob Arum. I'm not saying that he's racist. Again, people like to do that. People like to jump to conclusions. But that's how you know that people aren't being impartial. You have to be impartial. You have to let these things play out. You can't just jump to a side. Just because racism does exist, and I've already shown you that it does exist with Tesla, with John Gruden, with Donald Sterling, that doesn't automatically make Bob Arum guilty. Because racism exists, that doesn't automatically make Bob Arum a racist. The only way Bob Arum could be a racist is if he's contributed or if he's done the racist behavior. So now let's go to Bob for a second. Bob Arum said, I could build a house in Beverly Hills with the money that I've lost on Terence Crawford. And he puts that in his lawsuit. Do you want to know what a defense to that is? Do you want to know what a defense to that is? Think about it. It's common sense. Truth. If it's the truth, he can't be racist for saying it. If Bob Arum can prove that he took losses investing in TC, that statement becomes the truth. And if that statement becomes the truth, then it cannot be racism. Do you understand? I know. Do you understand that? I don't know if it's true, but I will say this based on those pay-per-view numbers that TC did, based on the fact that he was fighting on basic cable, based on the fact that nobody wanted to pick up that Kell Brook fight, I don't think Bob Arum's going to have a hard time showing losses, especially when you factor in those numbers he paid TC, $6 million, $4.8 million. Mm-hmm. So all he has to do is show losses, and that doesn't become a racist statement. It just becomes a true statement. G touched on it. Trill touched on it. Mikey Garcia left Bob Arum. Miguel Cotto left Bob Arum. Floyd Mayweather left Bob Arum. Oscar De La Hoya left Bob Arum. All these fighters left Bob Arum, and they're not all black. They're not all black. So if he has a history of Manny Pacquiao left Bob Arum. If he has a history of this happening to him, fighters moving on, can you say that it's all race? Especially one's Filipino, other one's Puerto Rican, the other one's Mexican, the other one's black, African American. Is it a race thing or is it a business thing? Do fighters just get so big that either he can't satisfy their demands or they start to feel like they can do a better job on their own? That's what it comes down to. So again, you got to ask yourself, is this a race thing or is it just a business thing? Lastly, he couldn't secure the Errol Spence fight. Again, this is why I've been saying you shouldn't negotiate through social media. If I'm Bob Arum, I pull up the video clip when TC speaking with a young woman and he says, I guess the fight's never going to happen because they're talking this 60-40 mess. And if anyone's getting 60, it's me and he's getting 40. And she says, so you're never going to fight Spence. And I quote Terence Crawford, I don't need Errol Spence. My legacy is already secure. I don't need Errol Spence. Okay, now if I'm Bob Arum, I play the tape. We're going to fight Errol Spence. He can beat Errol Spence and Danny Garcia on the same night. Who you want, Terrence? I want Manny Pacquiao. Bob Arum's face. You can't fake it. Bob Arum's face. My G, we've been talking for 2 years about this fight.
Poor Bob.
If I'm Bob Arum, I say he instantly sabotaged that whole thing so he can get that $900,000 bonus that we talked about when he came back. So he can get that $900,000 bonus and then later on accuse me of not making the Spence fight when I've done everything. Another thing I'm going to point out is what Tim Smith, the VP of PBC, said. There's no money in fighting Crawford, which makes it more likely that Bob Arum's statements about losing money on Crawford is most likely true. Mm-hmm. So if all of it's true, if all of it's there, if Bob Arum is saying, yo, I wanted to make the fight with them, but they weren't interested in making the fight, insert the vice president of PBC saying there's no money in the fight. How can you honestly just sit there and say it's flat out racism with Bob?
Exactly.
So, like, again, I get that racism exists. I know it exists. And when it exists, you should get paid, like homie from Tesla. When it exists, the perpetrator should resign, like John Gruden. the perpetrator should be forced to sell their team, like Donald Sterling. But I'm not convinced as of yet that Bob Arum is any of those guys. So stop the madness. TC could have had the Earl Spence fight. It seems if he would have agreed to 40%, but he didn't want to do so. He didn't call him out after the fight with Brooke. He called out Manny Pacquiao. Also, he had the opportunity to sign, and this is what gets me. I'm sorry, fellas. I know but
you cooking, man. Keep cooking.
This is what gets me. These TC fans will blame PBC for the fight not being made with Earl Spence. And they all know, they'll dap each other up. Yeah, PBC, Earl Spence is running. All this Earl Spence talk. But then he's going to sue Bob Arum and blame Bob. And then they're going to agree with that too. It can't be Bob Arum's fault and PBC's fault. It got to be one. And y'all agree that it's PBC's fault. So if it's PBC's fault that the fight didn't happen, how can it be on Bob? It can't go both ways. One person's responsible. One promotional company's responsible. Either it's Top Rank or either it's PBC. But really, it never dawned on you that it could have just be TC's at fault because he didn't want to call out Earl Spence and he didn't accept the 60-40 by his own admission. Watch the videotapes yourself. Stop fanboying so much that you ignore the evidence. Oh, I get it. He called out Earl Spence like 5 years ago. I get it. He called out Earl Spence like 5 years ago. And Earl Spence said, why wouldn't I make money beating up Sean Porter? Why wouldn't I and get a belt? Why wouldn't I make up money beating up Danny Garcia? Why wouldn't I do all that? And then fight you and then get your belt too. Because what they overlooked in that whole discussion was Earl said he was going to fight TC and he said he was going to stop him. And he said, when I stop you, they're going to say you're too small. And they made $1 million bet. They overlooked that whole thing, though. They overlooked that whole thing. All they focus on is what they want to focus on. This is my last point, though. Another reason why I don't think that, and we'll see what happens. I don't have all the evidence. Like I said, unless there's a smoking gun, though. Let's see. He said that Bob Arum's all this stuff. He had the opportunity to sign the PBC, which would have assured him a fight with any PBC fighter he wanted. And he chose to re-sign with Bob. And somehow that never gets held against him. When they call Earl a runner, they automatically don't care that he re-signed with Top Rank. Or they say, well, he made more money with Top Rank. How do you know? How do you know how much money he would have made if he signed with PBC? You were at the negotiation tables? How do you know how much a fight between him and these other people would have generated? You can't have it both ways. And that's the problem. When all is said and done, at this particular point in time, I know racism exists. I just don't have enough evidence before me to say that Bob Arum is a racist and that he did TC wrong because of race.
Let us know how you feel in the comment section. Please like and subscribe and check us out on Instagram and Twitter. And please check out our podcast on all major streaming services. This is our 100th podcast episode, and you know who you're rocking with. It's the Boxing Bros.
You're welcome. You're all welcome.